We have a new inference chip name on the show on a weekly basis at the moment. OPUs right through to the next generation of accelerator for inference. We'll get to the money, but what is the Positron elevator pitch? What is it you're doing differently that really would allow you to take on Nvidia in the market for inference?
Yeah, it's AI silicon focused on memory architecture, right? For inference, it's clearly memory bottleneck, both on memory speeds and memory capacity. Positron has deployed our first generation product already and are building our second generation, which is very much focused on building the memory closer to the systolic array. So very, very fast on decode speeds. And then second is having massive amounts of memory capacity directly attached to the chip. Our second generation will be the world's first terabyte memory chip, going up to 2.3 terabytes of attached memory. For comparison, Nvidia Rubin will launch with 384 gigabytes end of this year.
Right.
So that's where we are really focused on. If you think about decode applications, video generation, code generation, reasoning models, that's the current bottleneck. Very large models as well.
Mitesh, this issue, like latency, for want of a better expression, Nvidia is the giant that is Nvidia is looking at optics as well within the server design to overcome that. They got a lot of cash to do it. You now have $230 million. How's that going to help you progress here?
Yeah, I think, look, obviously you can't do cash-to-cash comparison. I think the research directions are different. I think that's where our technology is completely different. Well, NVIDIA is looking at optics to scale out over a rack scale, data center scale, because they have to connect multiple chips because they're limited on memory. We are kind of bringing the scale out a little bit inward. We are saying that by having that much memory, you still have to do scale out when the models are going to be 10 trillion parameters long or large. But the point is you have to do it less so. You can consume less chips, you consume less power, and so on, right? So it's a different type of architecture than what NVIDIA is focused on. I really do believe that, in the world of inference, you're going to see, the world, you've heard the word disaggregation, obviously that's going to come through, but, each silicon will have, or silicon architecture will have its kind of niche in terms of what application it really drives through fundamentally more efficiently. It's like the Pareto curve, you're trying to minimize power consumption, you're trying to minimize energy, you're trying to minimize the cost, whether per token, per video generation, and you're trying to increase the speed of output, right? And each of the silicon architectures will find its own niche there. And we are right in that space.
Is your niche finance? I mean, I'm looking at Jump Trading being one of your investors, and is that sort of a strategic investor? Where do you think that you'll be first shipping to?
Yeah, actually, Jump is one of our customers for the first gen product, and that's the validation that really kind of encouraged us to go out and raise this round. Jump became a customer first. They looked at our first gen, they used it. They looked at our second gen roadmap and they said, look, we got to invest in this company. And that's kind of how they came as co-lead on the round. So trading is obviously using a lot of language models, transformer models, autoregressive models for their applications. They're exploring that. It's R&D and expanding, but they're exploring that. And that's kind of where driving lower latency or allowing very large context length can really make an impact for them. So that's how they got interested. From a strategic point, Caroline, you mentioned we have ARM and QIA. So it's not just customers in finance or certain types of customers. It's the ecosystem players and different types of sovereign and data center players that are getting interested in this space as they look at heterogeneous deployments of silicon for inference workloads.
So we saw Grok, its focus on inference, and its interesting purchase by NVIDIA. How do you see your growth now? You've got money. I'm sure it's about hiring talent and getting and shipping the systems. But with ARM on the cap table, do you see some sort of purchase in your future? What do you want for the business?
I think our main focus is how can we deliver our maximum amount of chips in the world, right? I think that's really what drives us fundamentally is how can we deploy millions and millions of chips? I mean, we are starting started obviously with just the first prototype. We are in thousands right now. So it's still a long way to go. And, NVIDIA is the company in the millions, and that's kind of where we have to reach. Everything that goes by the side, acquisitions, going public, all those things are kind of byproducts of the actual technical product and the consumer and the customer. From a customer point of view, I'll answer you, Caroline. I think from our perspective, over 80% of world's inference gets driven through hyperscalers or associated customers, and that's kind of where we are really aiming to go after from specific workloads to them.